Manny, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. Let me turn the light on really, really quick just
Yeah.
so it's a little bit brighter.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes a difference,
Yeah.
but yes.
So, well, why don't we start with what share what surgery you had and what was the reasons you chose that particular surgery?
So for myself, I have the gastric bypass with the duodenal switch, which is, well, it's actually not the gastric bypass, it's a sleeve. It's a sleeve with a duodenal switch, which is obviously a big difference in the size of the stomach. For me personally, I chose to go with that surgery just because it's a little bit of a more aggressive surgery because of the weight that I was Um, at the weight that I was at during the time, I was close to almost 600 pounds. I had uh, hypothyroidism, so it would make me gain a lot of weight. And speaking with the doctor, we pretty much kind of explored our options and we finally settled on that surgery just because it would be the one that was going to be a little bit more invasive. There was pros and cons that we went over the whole thing. But overall, I felt most comfortable with that one because it was the one that was going to help me a lot more
So
throughout the whole surgery.
you said you started around 600 pounds. So how much weight did you lose with the surgery?
So I was at 598, which was basically 2 pounds away from 600. I went all the way down to 200 pounds. So I lost a total of 400 pounds. Yes, I lost a total of 400 pounds, which is basically two people. I lost a total of 400 pounds. I pretty much when I did go through with the surgery, it was a major life-changing experience. There was days when I would wake up and it was just, but I mean, still, regardless, it was, I think because still having the anesthesia in my body for the days, for the days that followed, it was just something that I felt like, oh my goodness, I just, what did I do? I would wake up, there was days that I was like, yes, that's great. Oh my God, I can't believe I finally did this. That's amazing. But there was also days, like I said, following the days after, I did have that anesthesia in my body still, and it would make me become very emotional. And there was days where I would wake up and I would cry. I would be like, what did I do to myself? Obviously, a lot of people might think that going through with the surgery is going to be instant. You're going to wake up and you're going to be shedding the pounds right away, which is definitely not the issue. Um, I mean, it's definitely not what happens. So there was days where I would literally look at myself, and obviously the days that followed, I was very swollen from the surgery. I was very swollen, and I would look at myself, and I was like, "What did I do to myself? I mutilated my body. I had them cut my entire stomach. I had them do this and that for me, and I feel so much bigger." But obviously, it was the swelling, you know. But like I said, I feel that it was because of the anesthesia that you go through that whole emotional process and it was just, to me personally, I don't know about other people's experience, but to me personally it was just something that I, in the beginning days, I had a horrible experience just because I feel like until the anesthesia wore off.
Yeah. How now, and I love that you're sharing about this because it was like you knew you wanted to lose weight, you wanted to get healthier, but there still was, like you said, like, oh my gosh, what did I do to myself? And you had good days where you were like, yes, and then you had days where you were crying and hysterical, and you probably thought that you were going crazy because it was so
Yeah,
like back and forth.
right.
And how long did that process take? Like from the time where you had those ups and downs to where you got to the point where you're like, yes, I'm happy with my decision.
To be completely honest, I feel like it might have been like a 2 week process,
Okay.
like a 2 week process because the anesthesia, regardless whether they tell you wears off in a couple of hours, it actually stays in your body for an entire week. The
Mhm.
anesthesia stays in your body for an entire week, and that's what causes, to me personally, that's what causes the whole emotional process. Like I said, maybe it might not be the case for everybody, but that was the case for me.
Yeah.
Up until I want to say maybe the second week, which is where I had my staples removed after the week period. When I had my staples removed and I was finally beginning to have a little bit more liquids in my body,
Mhm.
is when I feel like the process kind of started to like um, just maybe slow down, and just I kind of was able to wrap my head around it. Because like I said in the beginning, it was just something that it happened super, super fast. So um, for me, I feel like I didn't allow myself to like wrap my head around it and be like, okay, this is gonna be the day. So they had a cancellation. It was gonna be a month after. And because I was supposed to go with it wasn't originally gonna be Dr. Coach. I forget his name. It wasn't either one of the coats. It was the other
Corin, Dr.
Corin.
Corin.
Yes,
Mhm.
Dr. Corin. He was the one who originally was going to do my surgery, but he was going to be out. He was going to be out for about, they had told me maybe about 2 months. And then Dr. Matthew Coates had a cancellation. So they told me, hey, you know what? Instead of 2 months out, it's going to be on Thursday. And I was like, wait a minute, Thursday of like next month? They're like, no, Thursday as in 2 days from now. So in my head, I had, just thinking, not thinking with my head, but thinking with my stomach. I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? The day before, like a couple days before I have my surgery, I'm gonna go, and I love sushi. So I was like, a couple days before my surgery, I'm gonna go and I'm just gonna eat all the sushi I want. I'm gonna eat pizza. I'm gonna eat whatever I want that I know I'm not gonna be able to eat for a while, right? And then when they call me, they're like, well, it's going to be on Thursday, which is 2 days from now. So we need you to come today. They called me around like 8 in the morning. They're like, we need you to come today so you can have your labs. And we're going to go from there. And then after I had my labs, they're like, okay, so as of today, you're going to start fasting. I'm like, wait a minute, what? So I kind of like didn't really let it sink in until that moment when they drew my blood. And she's like, oh yeah, so you're not eating from now until, this was Tuesday. She's like, you're not eating today, from today all the way up until Thursday. I was like, oh my goodness. But I mean, it was something that I really wanted to do.
Right.
Um, and I think that's when everything started for me, which I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? What did I do to myself? Because I feel like I didn't allow myself to process it, because I was
Yes.
letting myself think like, "Ooh, I'm gonna go eat this and I'm gonna go eat that and I'm gonna have whatever I want." And when they gave me that news, I was so grateful for it, obviously, but at the same time, I was like, "Oh my God, like it's really happening."
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I think that's a good point because it's like, okay, so like what I hear you saying is telling people like allow yourself that time. Like if
Right.
it's important to you, like, yes, you can take that appointment, but also if you feel like you need it, that time to transition to wrap your mind around getting surgery. Now, going back to the 400 pounds that you lost, how long did it take you to lose 400 pounds?
You know what? For me, that was actually very, very quick. Um, because that procedure, the duodenal switch, is like they told me, it's kind of super invasive, which is where they cut your stomach, but then they also shorten your intestine. So
Mhm.
it allows you to lose the most amount of weight in such a shorter period of time, which is a good thing. In my case, it was a good thing, and I did lose a lot of weight. I want to say maybe within um, I don't even think I got to the 2 year mark, where when I had already because I got it in 2016, and by 2018 I was already at a comfortable weight. And then I allowed myself a while to kind of like just adjust a little bit more to how I was now.
Yeah.
And then at the end of 2019, I spoke to one of the one of the team members at the Stockton office,
Mhm.
and I asked if they were still doing the paniculectomy. And then at the end of 2019 was when I did the 3 visits that you have to do to see if your weight is staying consistent. And my weight stayed consistent. I was actually continuing to lose. And at the end of that, I ended up having my 3rd visit in January, and I had my paniculectomy done in February 5th of 2020.
Okay. And
Yeah,
you pretty much now, have you gained any weight
I
back?
have.
Okay.
I have. So, one of the cons for me personally, since I lost weight super, super fast, I've always suffered with being anemic.
Mhm.
So it kind of, for me, like towards the end in this past year, I ended up going on vacation to Colorado to go visit one of my best friends. And while being out there on my way back, I missed my flight. I missed my flight, so I had to have a connecting flight from Colorado to Vegas and then back home.
Mhm.
Um, well, I was only in Vegas for that night. Um, I tried to stay in my hotel room the entire night, but I went downstairs to go have dinner. I have a couple friends that live out there, so I went downstairs to go have dinner with them, and immediately I came back up to my room just because I didn't want to expose myself to anything because I knew that they everybody was saying that was kind of a hot spot for COVID. Um, so I end up coming home and I am like extremely sick. I'm having fever, I'm having nausea, I'm just like really, really bad. I go to the doctor and I test positive for COVID. Ever since that day, which was in January, I came back home January 25th, which was a couple days because I went out there to celebrate my birthday. Um, it was horrible, horrible. Like I was literally in bed for almost an entire month. I could not get up. My body, I was like super weak. From there, probably for the next 5 months, it was kind of like on and off for me like that,
Yeah.
regardless whether I would take my multivitamins and everything. So I'm vitamin deficient for vitamin A and vitamin D. And they give me the prescribed ones, which are the
Yeah.
10,000 I use.
Yeah.
So I take those and the iron. I take iron 6 times a day. That's like how bad my anemia is. And then the
Now let me ask you something. So I'm sorry, I want to make sure I understand. So did you have vitamin deficiency before you got COVID, or did COVID
um
trigger it?
no, I did have vitamin deficiency, but it wasn't that bad.
Okay, so it got is
It
so
got
before
worse.
before you had COVID, how many vitamins did you have to take? Were you
So
taking a day?
before COVID, my vitamin A and vitamin D, I only used to take vitamin A, the 10,000 I use once a day,
Okay.
and the vitamin D once a day. After that, it became vitamin A twice a day, so 20,000 I use. And then I ended up having to have the 50,000 I use for the vitamin D, and I would take those 3 times a week
Mhm.
because it just like lowered all of that. And then also my protein levels were just, my body was just not retaining any protein.
Mhm.
Regardless whether I would eat, I would take protein shakes or anything, like my body was just not retaining anything. And I actually lost my job because I got really, really like sick and I ended up having to go to the doctor. And they put a pick line in my arm, which I still have the little thingy right here.
Yeah.
Um, I had to be on TPN.
Yeah.
Um, Dr. Coates, senior, he actually wanted me to be on it for about a week. It ended up being 3 months. I ended up having to be on TPN for about 3 months until my body got better. Um, and it made me gain 60 pounds in those 3 months. I didn't gain weight prior to it. I gained weight during the TPN just because it was obviously a lot of fats and a lot of sugars. There's 2 different bags. There's a clear bag, which is like an IV one, and
Yeah.
then there's another one which is white, which is kind of, it looks like a milky substance. So the white one is a lot of omegas, fats, and sugars. So that's the one that was actually making me gain a lot of weight. I did call them because in my first month I gained 30 pounds,
Mhm.
and although the doctor was happy with that because it was helping me, I was like severely malnourished. Regardless whether they were happy with it, they were like, okay, you know what? Let's have him change something just because it is making you gain a little too much. So that's not the way that we want to go.
Right.
And then after the 3 months, which was in October of this past year, I ended up having a revision to where they did an extent. They did a lengthening of the common channel, which was they reattached a certain portion just so that I could absorb a little bit more. Because I guess when he originally did it, they left it to a portion where they were comfortable with it. However, when I ended up getting COVID, it just wasn't allowing me to absorb a lot. I basically wasn't getting any nutrition,
Right.
so that's why they ended up doing the extension, and then I'm good now. Um, but
How
yeah,
many
that
vitamins do you take though now?
right now I can show you. I actually take a lot of vitamins.
Okay.
So I do prepare my vitamins for 13 days.
Uh-huh.
So I buy these little pill packets,
Oh,
these little pill boxes, and I prepare them for 13 days. So this is actually all the vitamins that I take in a day. It's still a lot. It is a lot, but it's
well, I mean,
um,
if you that is a lot. So so with everything that's went on and with
yeah,
that packet full of pills that you have to take, and you have to take those, right? Like, so
for
you,
sure.
so
Yeah.
any regrets? Like, would you do it all over again?
You know, I would. The only thing that I would say that if it were to say a regret, the only thing that I would say I would regret would probably be doing it at the time that I did. I would for sure do it way before, like a lot younger.
Yeah.
That's probably the only regret. Regardless whether I got sick, I don't think I regret doing it.
And you feel like the benefits far out exceed
Oh, for
anything that
sure.
you would have
Yeah,
to.
for sure. I do think that the benefits do. Um, it definitely doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't matter because I feel a lot of the like what I did, it overcompensates for everything. Just because I did feel a lot, like I said, right now I am heavier and I am uncomfortable with with where I'm at.
Mhm.
Um, but I do feel that regardless whether having my TPN and just even though I did get sick, I feel that it overcompensates for everything.
Yeah. And so, and share a little bit about that. Like, if you were to say, like, how is your life better since you had surgery?
To be completely honest, I feel like it has been better 100% just because the way that I did have high blood pressure,
Mhm.
I had sleep apnea, and going the way that I was at the weight that I was, I feel, to me personally, I feel like I wouldn't have lived past maybe my 30s
Okay.
because I was so heavy.
Okay.
Regardless whether I was still active, I was never in a wheelchair. I never had any help with anything else like that. And I was still active. I feel like it did, it was, everything was a positive experience for me, regardless whether I had this outcome. Everything has genuinely been a positive outcome for me.
That's awesome. And like if you look at like all the changes you had to make, like nutrition changes, behavior changes, the vitamins, like what would you say like the hardest or the most challenging changes you had to go through with the surgery?
I would say in the beginning, it's obviously the only changes in the beginning would definitely just be the dietary changes, just
Mhm.
because we do have a lot of restrictions. It's obviously all that we're a lot of us, especially as Hispanics, we're used to eating a lot of carbs. We're used to eating a lot of carbs. That would probably be one of the only things that I would say. Um, for me personally, now I do incorporate carbs, even though I am trying to cut back just because I do want to like I want to lose the weight again. I'm finding it a lot harder to lose. I feel that since I did have the lengthening of the common channel, I feel like I'm actually gaining instead of losing.
Mhm.
Um, and that's one thing that we had spoken about we had to wait about maybe like a 6 month period, which has already been 7 months. This my appointment is next month on the 23rd, and that's a conversation that we're going to have about maybe having a revision.
Right.
um, but like I said, to me, the only thing that I would say that has probably been a challenge was just the whole finding it hard to cope without having any carbs. Because, like I
Mhm.
said, as Hispanics, we're used to eating a lot of rice, a lot of bread, a lot of tortillas. So it is a little harder, but at the end of the day, it's something that's obviously going to benefit you. Um, for me personally, one of my major reasons why I did it was because my sister has a little boy, and my
Mhm.
sister's older. My sister's 10 years older than me, and she had a little boy about 8 years ago. And I thought about it the way my life was because my parents had me when they were a little bit older. So growing up, I kind of was raised a little bit more by my sister.
Mhm.
Um, my parents were always working,
Mhm.
so whenever I wanted to go somewhere, my parents were always tired. My parents were always at work. And they were older, so they didn't feel like they wanted to, maybe take me to an amusement park or take me to something like that, just for example. And I thought about it the same way, and I was like, well, you know what? When my little nephew is around like 10 years old, 12 years old, my sister's going to be already older. My sister's going to be maybe in her 50s. So she's not going to feel it's going to be like my parents all over again. She's not going to feel comfortable wanting to go to an amusement park, walking around, taking him to Disneyland, taking him somewhere. So that's one of the reasons that I think made me make the decision about changing my whole lifestyle and having the surgery. And like I said, my only regret is not having it in my 20s. I had the opportunity to do it, and I chickened out. And I just never went through with it. So when I finally did it, I felt like, why not have had it back when I first had the opportunity?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you got to be ready. But I was going to say, if it's interesting how you got scared in your 20s, but then your only regret is you wish you had have done it earlier,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like too, like just so you another big non-scale victory is really just being able to be active, to be able to go to amusement parks,
For
ride the
sure.
rides with your nephew and stuff like that.
Right.
Any like is there anything you feel like you wish you had have known or that you know now? Like somebody considering surgery and they're on the fence. Like is there anything you feel like you want to share, or if you think back to
Um,
when you were making your
I
decision?
would definitely say do your research, just because there is a lot of things that come with having the surgery, regardless whether it's pros or cons. Um, it is a lot. I personally went through a little phase in my life just this past year as well, where I moved from San Jose. I moved here to Modesto, and I went through kind of like a little depression just because I don't know anybody here. I don't have any friends here or anything, and I started drinking.
Mhm.
And I started drinking, and I feel like that contributed to me gaining weight as well, or becoming malnourished, because when I would drink, I would forget to eat. Like, one thing is that obviously we never really get hungry, right? We don't get hungry. Aside from that, drinking, you forget a lot of things. So I would forget to take my vitamins. And even on a regular day, when I don't, like, let's say I don't drink, and I just don't take my vitamins, or I'm doing something and I forget, I feel like I have the worst hangover for maybe like 2, 3 days afterwards. So I would say for somebody that is considering their having a surgery, they do really, really have to do their research, because a lot of people will have to give up a lot of things. You have to, whether it's drinking, smoking. A lot of people like to smoke marijuana, and that. I have a friend personally who we had the same surgery. She had it about I want to say maybe like about a year, like a year and a half after myself, and she only ended up losing about, I want to say maybe like 60, 70 pounds.
Mhm.
And she was always like so curious as to why I ended up losing so much more. But like I told her personally, I think it's because of what you're smoking. Because it's regardless whether they take that little part of us that doesn't make us hungry anymore, the fact that you're smoking, it makes you crave that, or it's just head hunger. In the beginning for me, I would feel super, super hungry, but I ended up one day just sitting down and realizing that I wasn't actually hungry. It was head hunger. It wasn't that's something that a lot of people have to realize, that you're not actually hungry. It's head hunger.
No,
Yeah. And
love that.
yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that, oh my goodness, I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry. I can eat an entire plate. Your stomach, for the first 6 months, your stomach is still swollen. So you can only eat in the first 6 months, maybe 7 months. I would probably only be able to handle maybe 2, 3 spoonfuls,
Mhm.
because your stomach is still swollen. After the 6, 7 month period, I think your stomach just, it's like night and day, and you're able to fit a little bit more. So for me, I was like, wait a minute, half a sandwich, it used to take me about an hour to finish. And then now I can eat almost an entire sandwich. What's going on? So I thought I had stretched out my stomach, but then doing more research, it's no, it de-swells after the 6 month period.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
very normal. And I'm glad that you brought that up too about the smoking, just because surgery is a tool, right? And that's, I get that so often too. It's like two people get the exact same surgery and their outcome is so different, but you have to do your part, right? So the more that you do, and if you're doing a lot of mindless snacking, that's obviously going to, affect the rate at how much you lose.
right.
Um, well, and what about like if you were just to look at your process and going through with Central California surgery, like anything, like do you feel like our office could do anything differently? Like do you feel like you had a good experience, or if you were to give us any advice as an office, or a surgery center, anything differently we should have done?
I feel personally like I had a really good experience dealing with that office. The only thing for me that I would say, that would probably be I would have different, is just dealing with one PA,
Uh-huh.
because there was times where I would have one, and then the next time I would have somebody else, and then the next time I would have somebody else. So I felt like I would constantly have to repeat everything. And even though they have it in their notes, it's like, okay, so what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? So I feel like that would probably be my only, not complaint, just something that I would say is what I would like to be different, just dealing with one PA.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice and I appreciate that. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time with me today and sharing your story. You've done amazing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.